What's up, everybody? Welcome to Del on Movies and another edition of Movie Theater Memories. This is the series where I talk about some of the best and possibly some of the worst movie theater experiences of my lifetime. And today, as you can see by my shirt, we are going to talk about Nightmare on Elm Street from 1984, the original, and one of the best slasher movies ever made. I will die on that hill. So how did we get to go see A Nightmare on Elm Street way back when, 1984? By the time 1984 rolls around, I'm 13 years old, or turning 13 that summer, and I had already been watching horror movies for several years. I've been watching Friday the 13th movies for a few years now, and Sleepaway Camp and had come out, and a lot of these other horror movies, a lot of these other slash movies, I was really becoming a big fan of at the time. And one night I'm watching TV, and there's a commercial for A Nightmare on Elm Street, and this looks pretty cool. So I want to see this, but I'm 13. How do I get to go see this movie? Somehow or another, I convinced my mother to take us to see A Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, I don't know why she did it this way. I don't know if it was because she couldn't find a babysitter. I don't remember if it's because she just didn't think it was that big a deal or if there was any other reason. But she took a bunch of us to see A Nightmare on Elm Street. And by a bunch of us, this is what I mean, guys. I mean, it was me, of course, who I said was 13. Like I said, my very best friend, he was also 13. Okay, so far maybe a little questionable. My mom was lenient on what I watched, so but we'll go with that. There was my oldest of my other two brothers. There was my oldest one of those, but he's younger than me, so he was 8 at the time. Uh, there was my best friend's younger brother. I want to say he was the same age, 8, maybe 7. Um, again, questionable, very questionable, but it gets better. My younger sister was there. She was 1 year younger than my brother, so she was 7. And then my youngest brother was there. He was 4. All right, so we all go to see Nightmare on Elm Street. Uh, we're sitting there, we're watching the movie. Now, as the movie's playing, I'm 13, so I'm not really thinking about everybody else at this point. It's just me and my best friend. We sit next to each other, and I know mom is over there, but I'm not thinking about her actively during the movie. So the movie starts playing, and one of the things 13-year-old boys did at that time, at least for us, is when we watched a scary movie, we were basically kind of looking at each other every now and again to see if the other person's scared. Right? We wanted to be the tough guy. We didn't want to be the one that was scared. So we watching this movie, and one of the things that happens very, very early in the movie, Tina is the first girl in the movie who gets it. Sorry for a spoiler. Um, she. Oh, by the way, I've just noticed over my shoulder there's Freddy like over there. I don't have that fancy new set that came out yet. All you guys that got it, good for you. I don't, not yet. Anyway, but anyway, so Tina is she falls asleep. And it was like the second or third time already in the movie she falls asleep. But anyway, she winds up going into the yard, right? She's got her nightgown on. She goes into the yard and she runs into Freddy. And Freddy's standing there and he's talking to her and he kind of holds up he holds up his left hand and because he's got the glove on the right and he slices off his pinky and green gook starts shooting out of it. So that was the first time when we kind of looked at each other like, you scared? You jump? You scared? No, no, no. And I honestly, I think we were both lying. But anyway, so we watched that, and then a few moments later, Tina's trying to run away as Freddy's coming towards her, and it's one of the most famous shots of him. And trying to keep my hand in the frame here, but his arms like really elongated as he's walking down between the houses trying to get to her. And That wasn't one of those jump moments, but we kind of looked at each other like, that's strange, that's different. And then of course the kill happens where she's actually in the bedroom because she's asleep and she's floating up in the air and she's getting sliced all over the place and bleeding, and the boyfriend is there and he's screaming. And at that moment, we were both like, "Whoa, okay, we're this is gonna be good." So we go through this whole movie. We watch the movie, and lots of things happen. We meet Nancy, of course, and she's one of the kids on Elm Street. And I'm not gonna recount the whole story, but we get certain things that happen, and some of them are relevant to what happens later. So let me tell you about those. One of those things is that Nancy, they're all trying to fight sleep, of course, because they don't want to go to sleep because they'll meet Freddy Krueger in their dream and he may kill them. And Nancy's taking a bath and falls asleep in the bath. And what we see as an audience is we see Freddy Krueger's glove, and this is an iconic shot coming up out of the water, basically right between her legs, but comes up out of the water and then eventually dragging her underneath the water into, which is definitely not a bathtub at that point. A little bit later in the movie, Johnny Depp plays the guy who lives across the street from her. And she recruits him one time to watch her sleep and wake her up if anything starts to go wrong. And another time, he's back in his place and he's falling asleep, and he's falling asleep on his bed. And basically, him and everything on the bed with him, he's got TV, I think he's got some snacks on the bed. They all get sucked down into bed, and a geyser of blood just comes shooting out. And again, me and my best friend, we're kind of, I can't remember if we eat. I think we were eating popcorn at the time, but we're like, "Oh man, wow, this is crazy." And the movie goes on, and eventually it ends, and we're talking about how great A Nightmare on Elm Street was all the way home. Well, we get home, and this is where this becomes a very different movie theater memory for me, because there are lots of movies, horror movies even, where I sat and I watched the movie and was like, "Man, this is really really good," or it's really really bad. And, it could go either way. But my best friend and his brother, they actually lived their grandfather lived right across the street. So they went right across the street to the grandfather's house. They weren't staying with us at this time because we had a lot of sleepovers back then, but I don't think they was staying with us that night. We go in the house. It's nighttime now. We went. I can't remember if we went, if it was an evening show when we went, or I think it was, because we usually did. We didn't usually go during the daytime. But it's definitely late when we get back. And we've in this house, it's it starts with the house, to be honest with you, because it's a house that all of us living there, we still kind of had this belief, or at least it's a discussion. Now, I'm not going to say that everybody believes it in my family, but there is a discussion to be had about whether or not this house was haunted to begin with. Okay. um Take that however you will out there. Okay. But anyway, when you walk in the house, there's a little hallway, because it was originally built as a multi-family house. So there's a little bit of a hall of an area by the door. And if you go to the left, which would have been one family's house or living area, but it was basically just our living room, dining room, kitchen going that way. And if you kept straight, it was a really long hallway with a really steep flight of steps. And at the top of the steps was my mother's bedroom, was right in front of it, and a bathroom was right to the left, to my left, not the left you're looking at, but right to the left. And then there were a door that goes to the attic, and that was where my room was, and my youngest brother, and I'll come back to that. And then there were two more bedrooms. One was a converted kitchen because, like I said, it was a multifamily house. So one was a kitchen that was converted into a bedroom. And then there was the bedroom where my sister stayed. In the big room, we're all still jealous of that because she was the only girl. She got the big room. But anyway, sis, love you. Um, anyway, so here's what happened. After this long night at the movies, my youngest brother, he comes in the house. with us all, and he walks up the steps and goes right to the bathroom because he has to go to the bathroom. No problem. Except this time he decides to leave the door wide open. Here I come, like, dude, what are you doing? Close the door. So I go in there and I pull the door closed, and he lets out this scream. He's like, like blood curdling scream. I open the door again. He's 4 years old, guys. So I open the door, and he's kind of looking at the toilet. He's kind of shaking. He's still screaming, and he's like, no. He's like, no. Open the door. Open the door. Open the door. So he has to use the bathroom with the door open because he's looking at the bathtub and thinking about the scene I just talked about, Nancy in the bathtub. And so we're all kind of, having us older ones, we're having a little fun with that. And he then has to go up to the attic because he and I slept in the attic. Um, it's not like most attics that you know of. For instance, in my house where I am now, the attic has only a very small area where you can actually move around in, where you can walk, and it's not very big at all. But this was a really long attic, and um, it was fully finished, so you know you could walk all over and do whatever you wanted to up there. And and one side of the attic was my bed, on the other side at some points was his bed, some points was both my brothers' beds were over there. Some point my bed was over there, and somebody else was sleeping on it's I can go on and on. But anyway, so he goes up there, turns the lights on, and that's not a problem. And he doesn't want to go to bed. So, and I'm not really thinking about what happened, in the movie. Even after the whole bathroom thing, I'm just like, dude, I'm like, Man, go, it's time to go to bed, sleep. So he goes over to the bed and he starts feeling the bed, and then instantly it hit me, Johnny Depp got sunk into bed, even though I didn't even know Johnny Depp's name at that point. It was like his first movie. But anyway, he's doing this number on the top of the bed, trying to see if there's a hole in it, basically, that he's going to get sucked down into and murdered. And so I had to talk him through that one, and eventually he did, he did get into the bed and go to sleep. And eventually, you know, he was okay eventually. So he wasn't scarred for life or anything. Well, at least I don't think so. However, he is not a horror movie fan, unlike myself. I love horror movies. He is not really a horror movie fan, and I'm sure he's owned up to this, that has something to do with it. Um, not that he's never watched horror movies, he has, but he's not a horror movie fan the way I am. And bringing it back to my own life going forward, and I don't say this to say anything bad about my mom, because I love my mom. Um, But if there was one thing that I knew that I was going to do a little bit differently, was I was going to be slightly stricter. I wasn't very strict, but slightly stricter with the things that my kids watched at a really young age, because she was really, really lenient with that. And 4 was definitely far too young to be watching A Nightmare on Elm Street. And rest in peace, mom, and still love you. Um, but that's one thing I did differently. So my kids, uh, they didn't really watch horror until they got about 12, 13 years old. And even then, it wasn't like anything super crazy until they got older. Um, but all that, it was a experience fondly remembered by me. I don't know if my brother fondly remembers it, but he definitely remembers it. The rest of us, we all have fun with him about it. Um, but yeah, we all recognize 4 was probably a little bit too early, and it just turned into one of my greatest movie theater memories. And that's really all I have to say about it. There's nothing really else to say to that, other than shout out to my brother, because I actually made sure I got permission from him to tell this story, because I didn't want him I didn't want him sore at me. I didn't want him upset with me because I'm putting his business out in the street. Love you, bro. And that's all I have for everybody else. Thanks for hanging out with me. If you've been here before, thanks for hanging out with me again. Bye.